And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today is February the 11th. It is the 42nd day of the year. Just 323 days remain to this year's over with, and we'll be starting a new one. Holidays and observances. National Latte Day. Velvety cream in. Oh, so delicious, according to a lot of folks. National Shut-In Visitation Day. World Day of the Sick. National Peppermint Patty Day. Daytona Pole Day. National Get Out Your Guitar Day. National Inventors Day. National Don't Cry Over Spilled Milk Day. Pro Sports Wives Day. Satisfied Staying Single Day. Embracing the solo journey through life. Relishing the freedom to chart your own course. National White Shirt Day. Celebrating when folks in factories banded together, rolled up their sleeves and said, "We're in this together." That's when it started a new era for labor. Grandmother Achievement Day. Promise Day. International Day of Women and Girls in Science. National Make a Friend Day. Be Electrific Day. National Foundation Day. Japan's fascinating history includes epic battles and legendary figures, leading to the creation of a unique culture, still thriving today. Children's Mental Health Day. National Cardiac Rehabilitation Week. Have a Heart for Chained Dogs Week. If you see a dog chained up in a yard and being ignored, need to say something about it. National Green Week. National Hero Week. International Week of Black Women in the Arts. Artes Mundi goes on until March the 1st. National Apprenticeship Day. Crafting expertise through hands-on learning. Venice Carnival. Student Volunteering Week. World Ag Expo. National Salute to Veterans Patients. Pickle Time Week. Chastity Week. Love a Minch Week. National Marriage Week. Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week. Tapati Rapa Nui Festival. Love Data Week. Heart Failure Awareness Week. And, of course, famous people born on this date. Thomas Edison. Burt Reynolds of Smokey and the Bandit fame. Taylor Lautner. Khalid. And Sarah Palin. She who would be president. Well, let's see what stories we have in the news today. New images have shown up regarding the kidnapping of Nancy Guthrie. There's a man who says he was detained for questioning in regard to her kidnapping. He's now been released. The Carlos Palazuelos told Fox News he was questioned in connection with the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, but he didn't have anything to do with it. Told Fox News he was detained for questioning during a traffic stop, and investigators asked him about his recent whereabouts. Said he delivers packages in the Tucson area and unsure if he had delivered a package to Nancy Guthrie's house, saying it was a possibility. Said investigators showed his in-law a picture of somebody wearing a mask, and supposedly they said it looked like his eyes. That's all he knows about it. In a separate interview, he told Telemundo he's a DoorDash driver and front and back door of his home are damaged during a search by law enforcement, which was carried out with a warrant. Well, the search continues. Well, GOP lawmakers shocked after an anti-ICE sheriff was stumped by a fifth grade civics question. North Carolina Republican State Representative Alan Chesser said he was taken by surprise when a Democratic sheriff who has long opposed cooperating with U.S. Customs and Immigration Enforcement couldn't answer a basic question about how the government works. North Carolina House Oversight Committee hearing spurred on by the recent killing of a young Ukrainian woman, Irina Zarutska, in Charlotte, took an unexpected turn when Chesser asked Mecklenburg County Sheriff Gary McFadden, what branch of government do you operate under? He's a top law enforcement officer in the county where Zarutska was killed. Simply answered Mecklenburg County, prompting Chesser to speak and repeat, what branch of government do you operate under, Sheriff? Well, he said the Constitution, to which Chesser responded, that's what establishes the branches of government. I'm asking you what branch you come under. McFadden answered in Mecklenburg County again. Chesser remarked, that's not where I was anticipating getting stuck. You aware of how many branches of government there are? The sheriff quickly shot back, no. This is the chief law enforcement officer of that particular county. Well, breaking the fourth wall, left-wing groups are defiant as GOP sheds light on a number of groups tied to China. House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Jason Smith dropped the gavel at 10:05 a.m. on Tuesday, opening a hearing on malign foreign influence. The groups under scrutiny didn't retreat, apologize, or go silent. They escalated. Inside room 1100 in the Longworth House office building, Smith warned that the U.S. nonprofit sector had become a vulnerability exploited by foreign adversaries. Outside the hearing room, across social media, far-left organizations tied to Marxist tech tycoon Neville Royal Singham, born in the U.S. and living in Shanghai, pressed forward with rhetoric vilifying the U.S. for its alleged colonial policies and imperialism, and amplifying narratives aligned with the Chinese Communist Party or the CCP and communist allies like Cuba. Smith said this is not about politics, it's about national security. As he opened the hearing, titled Foreign Influence in American Nonprofits, Unmasking Threats from Beijing, he said the committee was investigating money trails behind tax-exempt groups accused of sowing chaos, fueling anti-Semitism, and interfering in elections. During the hearing, Smith sharpened the warning. He said the CCP is taking advantage of our tax-exempt sector. Well, Eileen Gu garners backlash for commenting on President Trump's statement while representing China in the Olympics. She's an American-born Team China Olympic skier. Came under immense scrutiny on social media this week after making comments about President Trump's recent criticism of U.S. Olympian Hunter Hess. Gu was born in San Francisco, highest paid Winter Olympic athlete in the world, making an estimated $23 million in 2025 alone amid partnerships with a number of Chinese companies, including the Bank of China and Western companies. Said she represents China for her mother, who was born there. She has never spoken out publicly against China's alleged human rights abuses, including the nation's alleged systematic campaign of repression against Uyghurs and other predominantly Muslim ethnic minorities in the Xinjiang Autonomous Region. But she has commented on President Trump's criticism of Hess for expressing mixed emotions about representing the U.S. and Milan Cortina. She said, I'm sorry the headline that's eclipsing the Olympics has to do something so unethical in the spirit of the games. Really runs contrary to everything the Olympics should be about, she told reporters. Said she's been caught in the crossfire herself. Well, at least 10 are dead, including the suspect in connection with shooting at a British Columbia high school. At least 9 people are killed in connection with the shooting at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School in British Columbia, according to officials. They said the suspect was also found dead. The Tumbler Ridge Royal Canadian Mounted Police confirmed to Fox News that the officers responded to reports of an active shooter at the school at 1:20 p.m. local time Tuesday. While searching the school, the officers found 6 victims dead from gunshot wounds and a person believed to be the suspect dead from what appeared to be a self-inflicted injury. 2 victims are airlifted to a hospital with serious or life-threatening injuries. A third victim died while being transported to the hospital. During the investigation, police identified a secondary location believed to be connected to the incident, where 2 additional victims were found dead inside a residence. Approximately 25 others with non-life-threatening injuries were taken for assessment to the local medical center. All remaining students and staff were safely evacuated from the school. Police don't believe there are any additional suspects or ongoing threats to the public. Well, there's a lot of unexplained shootings like this going on these days. Well, the FAA has halted all the El Paso airport flights for special security reasons, and they threaten to use deadly force against those threats. They've grounded all flights to and from the El Paso airport. FAA has grounded all flights for the next 10 days, the agency announced Wednesday, warning the U.S. government may use deadly force against an aircraft in violation if it is deemed to pose an imminent security threat. All flights in and to and from El Paso are grounded, including commercial, cargo, and general aviation. Restriction is effective from February 10th at 11:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time to February 20th, 11:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. FAA cited special security reasons for the closure, but didn't elaborate. The no-fly restriction applies to airspace over El Paso as well as nearby Santa Teresa, New Mexico. Well, El Paso Airport issued a statement confirming the closure this morning. Travelers should contact airlines to get the most up-to-date flight status information, it said in that statement. Well, interestingly enough, we haven't heard anything about an ongoing security issue. Well, an Illinois city, Evanston, Illinois, is going to issue $25,000 to 44 residents in reparation payments, according to the City Reparations Committee. Established in 2019 and approved by the City Council in 2021, the program issues $25,000 in direct cash payments to black residents and descendants of black residents who lived in Evanston between 1919 and 1969. That's the first city in the nation to pass a reparations plan, pledging $10 million over a decade to black residents. These payments are intended to cover housing expenses, according to Evanston official Cynthia Vargas. Tashik Kerr, assistant city manager, said during a meeting with the residents will be contacted to inform them their payment are on the way over the next few weeks. According to a city memo, the fund had received $276,588 from Evanston real estate transfer tax. The committee discussed taxing Delta 8 THC products to sustain funding in the future. Well, it's interesting to note that this idea of reparations keeps raising its head. But this appears to be the first time that money's actually changed hands. Well, in another shooting, multiple people found dead after a shooting inside a gated Florida community, according to that sheriff's office in Sarasota County. Multiple people are dead after gunfire rang out Tuesday at a home inside a gated community in Sarasota. Sarasota County Sheriff's Office said the shooting happened on the 4820 block of Fall Crest Circle, prompting a heavy law enforcement response. Officials said multiple people are dead, though none of the bodies have been identified. No survivors are found at the scene either. The incident appears to be isolated, and investigators continue to work the scene, according to the sheriff's office. There is no continuing threat to the public. No arrests have been announced, and authorities have yet to release any information regarding suspects. It's not clear what led to the shooting, which took place at a home inside Amberley, a gated residential subdivision. Sarasota is part of Southwest Florida's Gulf Coast and sits on Sarasota Bay, which connects to the Gulf of America. It's about an hour-and-a-half drive from Tampa, about a 2.5-hour drive from Orlando. The story is continuing. More information is being gathered. Well, Bachelor star Madison Prewitt says a secret sexual sin battle led to shame. She said she was living a double life. She's finally coming clean after years of living in secret sexual sin. Tuesday's episode of the Candace Cameron Bure podcast, Pruitt spoke candidly about the internal struggle she began facing in middle school after publicly presenting herself as somebody waiting until marriage while privately grappling with pornography use and masturbation. Around 13 or 14, she got introduced to pornography at a young age by a friend, and that started a long journey and battle for her with porn and masturbation. That created a lot of shame and secrets in her life. She lived her life very much in this. She's saving herself for marriage. She's got her virgin card. She's following God, but she's still into pornography and masturbation. Well, a lot of health experts are warning of that it's a big mistake, according to the experts, to legalize marijuana. I can't talk this morning. After years of backing the legalization of marijuana in the U.S., the New York Times changed course in an editorial published Tuesday. In the piece entitled, "It's Time for America to Admit that It Has a Marijuana Problem," the editorial board stated the U.S. has recently gone too far in accepting and even promoting its use. This is a stark departure from the publication's longtime support of making marijuana mainstream. In a 2014 editorial, the Times argued the federal ban on the drug should be repealed. The decision should be left up to the individual states. Well, there's always experts who think their opinions are important to everybody else. American Olympic medalist fires a direct message at critics. They hate to see two broke bees winning. American figure skater Amber Glenn fired back at critics Tuesday following her gold medal victory in the team event at the Winter Olympics. Says she was taking a social media break because of hate comments after criticizing President Trump's administration. Returning to TikTok with photos of herself and Alicia Liu. She directed her caption at those who apparently came after her. They hate to see two woke bees winning, she said. If woke means people who use their platforms to advocate for marginalized communities in the country they're actively representing, then yeah, sure. Well, they seem to think their opinion is more important than that of anybody else. Well, CNN ratings are down bigly from 2017 Trump bump through 2025 amid changing media landscape. CNN benefited from the so-called Trump bump during President Trump's first administration. The ratings are down a great deal the second time around as both the media landscape and the network have changed dramatically. Analysis showed CNN has lost more than 40% of its total day and primetime audience from 2017 to 2025, the respective first years in a two Trump presidencies. 2015, CNN averaged 711,000 primetime viewers with a total daily audience of only 489,000. That year, Trump didn't descend the escalator to announce his presidential run until mid-June. He wasn't taken particularly seriously by mainstream press for much of that year. For early 2016, it became clear that Trump had a legitimate chance of becoming the Republican Party's nominee. CNN and other media outlets started to realize the Apprentice star had a significant ratings draw. CNN famously aired empty podiums at Trump's events in anticipation of him speaking in order to keep the viewers hooked. It carried his rallies live, sometimes taking heat from the left for giving so much attention to the GOP nominee. And the result was a massive ratings bump that saw CNN's average 1.3 million primetime viewers and total day audience of 752,000 in 2016. Well, during that time period, the term Trump bump emerged in the cable news industry and in CNN. Their end-of-the-year press release touted a ratings milestone, and Axios reported their Trump delivered a ratings boom. Well, of course, everybody was sure he wouldn't be elected, and then he was, and golly gee whiz, what do we do now? Well, Georgia Republicans hammer Ossoff over silence after ICE detainer in an alleged child rape case. Georgia Senator John Ossoff, O-S-S-O-F-F, vocal critic of immigration and customs enforcement, who's running for re-election in November, is facing heat from Georgia Republicans over his lack of public comment until today on news that ICE lodged a detainer for a Georgia illegal immigrant accused of a heinous crime. January 27th, the Department of Homeland Security announced it placed a detainer on Mexican national Kenneth Moreno Guzman after he allegedly broke into the back door of a Georgia family's home earlier that month and raped an 11-year-old girl while threatening her 10-year-old sister in the room with a knife. Another horrific tragedy for two innocent children by the hands of a criminal illegal alien. The monster should have never been in our country in the first place, according to DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin in a press release at the time. These are the victims President Trump and Secretary Noem are fighting for, and the media and sanctuary politicians ignore. We've lodged an arrest detainer to ensure ICE is notified to arrest this creep before he can prey on more innocent children. Fox News Digital Search did not find any public comment from Ossoff acknowledging the crime or the importance of ICE involvement as of Monday. Well, if you've ever read my book, Why Would They Say It? Justice in Georgia is a unique concept. You can find that book on Amazon and Amazon Kindle. And I've got a second book along those same lines that came out called While They're Still Saying It. Well, far-left podcaster Jennifer Welch, known for profane attacks, emerges as a destination for Democrats. Far-left podcast star Jennifer Welch has emerged as a darling of the liberal media after her often extreme, regularly virile rhetoric put her in a position to influence the Democratic Party. She's co-host of the I've Had It podcast. She's an Oklahoma City-based interior designer who starred in the short-lived Bravo reality show Sweet Home Oklahoma from 2017 to 2018. It wasn't until 2020 that she launched I've Had It with co-host Angie Pump Sullivan podcast, which initially launched as a political platform for Welch and Sullivan to air petty grievances and combat toxic positivity from other influencers, increasingly delved into politics starting in 2024. And you do not want to get me started on politics. The things I could tell you that are going on here would absolutely blow your mind. Grand juries rejected a DOJ effort to indict Democratic lawmakers who urged the military to defy illegal orders. That would never have been allowed when I wore the uniform. Grand jury in the nation's capital on Tuesday refused the Justice Department's attempt to indict a group of Democratic lawmakers who encouraged U.S. military members to ignore illegal orders in a video posted online. DOJ opened an investigation into the video featuring 6 Democratic lawmakers calling on troops and members of the intelligence community to defy illegal orders from the federal government. These lawmakers all served in the military or the intelligence agencies. And the lawmakers in the video are Senators Lisa Slotkin of Michigan, Mark Kelly of Arizona, as well as Representatives Chris DeLuzio and Chrissy Houlihan of Pennsylvania, Maggie Golander of New Hampshire, and Jason Crow of Colorado. Well, if you don't want to serve the country, there's the door. I can't make it any more clear than that. When Arizona Mexican restaurants been swamped with hate over free meals for ICE, but the owners responded with a God bless you comment. Arizona Mexican restaurant run by immigrants has been swamped with hateful messages, calls, and online reviews over it giving free meals to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents. But the owners say they're responding with kindness. We're trying to respond in a positive way, just because I know that putting more hate onto hate is not going to lead to anything good. Jorge Rivas, who owns Sammy's Mexican Grill, told Fox News on Tuesday. In a recent video shared on social media by the outlet Pulso, Sammy's Mexican Grill is highlighted as a restaurant that respects federal immigration enforcement agencies, offers them free meals. Well, unfortunately, in El Paso, you don't see that. Well, we've been talking about conspiracy theories, and there's certainly a lot of them floating around. We've got, well, there we go. Sometimes things run slow. We talked yesterday about John Titor, who claims to be a time traveler. Let's talk about the Popish plot. A series of events known as the Popish plot was the result of two diametrically opposed forces that existed in the late 1600s. Political intrigue of that day was carried out by the British Whig Party, who had been increasing their antagonism toward the Catholic Church. England had already officially broken away from Catholicism a number of decades before, when in the 1500s, King Henry VIII formed the Anglican Church, separating British Christians from the Pope's dominion in Rome. Rome came largely out of the British monarch's desire to annul his marriage. When the Catholic Church denied him his wish, he started his own Protestant-style church as a result. This new church quickly granted the king's annulment and went on about transforming the previously Catholic kingdom into a haven for Protestant heresy. England's transformation from Catholic to Protestant wasn't a smooth one, though. Many people have been happily living their lives as Catholics weren't going to be converted overnight. On the contrary, instead of the Protestants winning the household and holdouts over, the flames of fury and resentment would burn even brighter. In some respects, the divide between Catholics and Protestants in Britain has carried on to this very day. In regard to the time of the Popish plot, it was discovered that a significant Catholic minority were behaving as obstructionists to the Whig Party. The plot was hastily devised to get rid of this undue influence and have Catholics removed from Parliament completely. And these plotters intended to hatch a completely fake insurrection against themselves and the Protestant establishment and blame it on the Catholics. Democrats have tried to do much the same thing today in this country. Well, the key protagonist of this false flag operation was a gentleman by the name of Titus Oates and a Protestant clergyman named Israel Tonge, Tonge. Both men were virulent anti-Catholics and were fully dedicated to engineering a larger conspiracy, or call it a plot, against the Catholic base. One of the main accusations that they invented was that Catholics were plotting against the king's life. Taking Britain's greatest fears in regard to the Catholic clergy, they compiled them into one succinct fictional manifesto and sought to pass it off as the work of the Catholics. Now, Oates wrote this completely contrived plot to kill the king down on a convenient little tract, and then, pretending that it was material seized from the Catholics themselves, had it delivered to the king. While the plot calls for the killing of the king and his replacement with his brother James, who was actually a Catholic, a piece of fictional inflammatory literature was apparently so convincing that a lot of Catholics even thought it was real and began searching among their own ranks to find the extremists in their midst. They never found anybody, of course, since the whole thing was made up, but nobody realized this until a lot later, after countless lives were ruined by the fabrication. Fear and enmity against Catholics had already reached a fever pitch before the fake tract was sent out, and so the time seemed right for such delusions to take hold. Shortly after the king got the forged tract, Oates was called in to testify under oath. During his interrogation, he laid it on as thick as he could. Even though the plot was the product of his own warped imagination, he pointed the finger squarely at the Jesuits. Strangely, the man who interviewed Oates to receive this account, Sir Edmund Geoffrey, was found dead shortly after this. And this, of course, only added to the conspiracy, as widely believed that some Catholic cabal must have assassinated the magistrate in order to keep what Oates had told him from getting out. The shocking nature of Geoffrey's demise only added fuel to the fire. Found strangled to death and brutally disemboweled with his own sword. Forensic investigations were non-existent back then, so the perpetrator of that grisly crime would remain a mystery. It wasn't long before the misdeed was laid firmly at the feet of the Catholics at large. It wasn't long after that the nobility of England demanded a reckoning and furthermore insisted that all Catholics in London should be expelled, denied access to the city in order to protect the rest of the British elite. The whole city seemed to be in discord, in fear of what had happened, and even more in fear of what they believed would happen. Fear was actually so palpable that they gave name to it. They called it Geoffrey's Autumn. Soon after this autumn, the witch hunt against Catholics began in earnest. Oates began to name supposed Catholic saboteurs right and left, but when he named off 5 leading members of Parliament as how to be Catholic, the king himself got involved. In fact, it said that when he heard the accusation, it struck him as so absurd he laughed in Oates' face. But Oates knew he was on a roll, and the king's disbelief wasn't enough to deter him. Instead of backing off from the story, he doubled down and pointed the finger at the court physician and even the queen herself, making completely unfounded accusations that the two were part of the Catholic Popish plot and actually trying to poison the king. The king, for his part, appalled that Oates would accuse his own wife, ordered his arrest. But the wave of paranoia that Oates had set into motion were now too powerful for even the king to have stopped, and Parliament intervened on his behalf. The king, either unwilling or unable to stand up to his own Parliament, backed down and began to acquiesce to some of their Oates-inspired demands. As a result, draconian measures were enacted against Catholics in the form of 2 specific acts of Parliament that were passed in 1678. These acts specifically forbid Catholics from participating in either the House of Lords or the House of Commons. Meanwhile, relishing his newfound powers, the magician of mass hysteria, Oates continued to make unfounded claims to whip up anti-Catholic sentiment. These included such incredibly bizarre assertions as a Popish plot to riddle the king with silver bullets. Apparently somebody thought he was a werewolf, under the belief that bullet wounds from silver bullets wouldn't heal. This absurd madness continued unabated till 1681, when prominent legislators finally began to come to their senses and became bold enough to question the entire conspiracy theory that Oates had created. And upon a closer examination, it was soon determined that several men had been wrongfully condemned under the Oates Popish plot hysteria. And members of Parliament became deeply embarrassed and ashamed now that they realized how badly they had been hoodwinked by Oates. They started working to correct the wrongs they had committed. And if they wished to save their reputation, it was mostly too late. All of their names had already been dragged deep into the muddy trenches of unfounded and irrational conspiratorial belief. Oates himself was eventually tried and convicted of perjury in 1688, but was released shortly after that. And for all the death and destruction his word had caused, it was actually just a slap on the wrist. The completely fabricated Popish plot stands as one of the greatest testaments to the power of conspiracy theories. They can build from even the wildest of accusations and take on a life of their own. It seems that once beliefs such as this take root, whether they're real or completely imagined, they're incredibly hard to shake off. And the Popish plot shows us that sometimes even the greatest conspiracy is a conspiracy theory itself. Well, a lot of folks roll their eyes when we hear the latest conspiracy theories making the rounds. Many of us, it seems that we've heard it all before, and that all the same old material is simply being recycled and repackaged for us once again. It seems every few years somebody claims the end of the world is coming, aliens are invading, or a time traveler's walking among us. Internet age has magnified this human propensity of the mind to wander right into the realm of conspiratorial belief. At its very core, conspiracy theory consists of a deeply held conviction that what's being presented as reality and gospel truth is a deception. It doesn't have to be a complete deception. Even just a few minor omissions can sometimes lead the mind to scream conspiracy. And in the highly cynical and questioning world of today, it seems that just about every piece of information we're presented with as absolute fact has to fall under a high level of scrutiny. After all, we live in the epoch of fake news and alternative facts, where almost everything we see or hear has to be Google searched and cross-checked with other sources several times over before we can believe it. In this time of high uncertainty, good conspiracy theory is never too far away. The conspiracy theory I talked about the other day, the fact that Mother Teresa may have worked for the FBI. I've seen a number of emails about that. Now, I'm not saying I believe any of the material that I'm putting out, but I am putting out material that is, in fact, has a solid basis. There is a conspiracy theory to that effect. And if we don't discuss these conspiracy theories, well, they never get dealt with. Well, we've got a number of new books that have come out. New series called The Assassination Files. As I said, our new website, hudnallfiles.com, is live. We're in the process of populating it with all the products we have available. And a number of names that are popping up where their deaths are actually unexplained would absolutely blow your mind. There's still a lot of mysteries about the death of President Kennedy and Robert Kennedy, Marilyn Monroe, Sam Cooke. The list goes on and on. I've just completed, working with my wife, my 115th book, and you'll be able to see all of them on hudnallfiles.com. It just takes a while to put them up, don't you know? Well, our next topic we're going to talk about is the Bermuda Triangle. One of my favorite topics. When Charles Berlitz made his famed trip to the Bermuda Triangle back in the early 70s, he actually invited me to go. Unfortunately, the Army had a different idea about what my time was going to be spent doing. But the Bermuda Triangle is commonly regarded as one of the biggest mysteries of the present time. And after listening to some people talk about it, a lot of folks don't even know what it is. Now, the triangle, also known as the Devil's Triangle, is a stretch of the western North Atlantic Ocean. A region loosely defined by imaginary lines drawn from Florida to the island of Bermuda, then to Puerto Rico and back to Florida, forming a triangle. Now, the mystery itself stems from several aircraft and ships that mysteriously vanished inside the triangle under strange circumstances. Nature's phenomenon leads itself to a myriad of theories and hypotheses and explanations. And these range from the religious and superstitious to the scientific and the mundane. Unfortunately, records of the Bermuda Triangle events are often rife with false information, deceptive reports, and just made-up tales. Studies of the area are often performed with a bias towards one particular theory, leading to the unwarranted dismissal of hard facts or the acceptance of unreliable data that's then forcibly declared as truth. You might be wondering, how did the triangle come to be? Well, it's hard to tell without falling into somebody's trap. But we're going to try to unravel the origin. Now, the foundation of the myth is just as foggy as the myth itself, but in a way, that's just part of the charm. Now, several suggestions of the phenomena crop up prior to the formal definition of the triangle area in 1964. One of those was reported by none other than Christopher Columbus, reported that his ships experienced unpredictable compass readings while sailing through the Sargasso Sea. Also sighted unidentified lights on the horizon on October 11th, 1492. And so far, these incidents are still unexplained. The actual birth of the legend was given rise to in 1950 by an article published by Edward Van Winkle Jones in the Miami Herald. And this article can be regarded as the earliest direct reference to the Bermuda Triangle. He cited several incidents, including the December 5th, 1945 disappearance of Flight 19, a training flight of 5 U.S. Navy TBM Avenger torpedo bombers that never returned home. The most shocking part of this disappearance was the fact that the search and rescue aircraft deployed to locate the flight vanished as well. As no cause has ever been conclusively established, theories about what happened all boil down to conjecture. Now, Jones also cited the disappearance of the commercial airliners Star Tiger and Star Ariel in 1948 and 49, respectively. Star Tiger was traveling from the Azores to Bermuda, and Star Ariel was traveling from there to Kingston, Jamaica. In both cases, the planes were apparently operating well beyond their own limits. So these incidents very well have stemmed from technical difficulties. Not that this is any comfort to the families of the folks who are on board. And then George X. Sand made his contribution to the myth just 2 years after Jones's article. Writing for Fate magazine, he published an article entitled "The Sea Mystery at Our Back Door," which he narrated a series of disappearances without a trace that took place in what he described as a water-ready triangle bounded roughly by Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. So he explicitly laid out the foundation for what's now known as the Bermuda Triangle. And like Jones, Sand cited the infamous Flight 19. He also reported several additional disappearances, such as that of the Sandra, a square-cut tramp steamer headed from Georgia to Puerto Cabello, Venezuela. This heavy steamer vanished on the way, and the case was left as unsolved after several days of fruitless search. He also covered the disappearance of Albert Snyder, American jockey. Search for Snyder involved at least 800 people, but despite their efforts, they only found his skiff caught in the mangrove roots of an unnamed island. They searched the island thoroughly and found no conclusive evidence to what might have happened to Snyder. This happened March 5th, 1948. And there was yet another disappearance that same year. December 28th, the DC-3 transport plane was heading to Miami from San Juan, Puerto Rico. Everything seemed to be all right and the weather was good, but the airliner simply vanished. Nothing was found then, and nothing has been found since that time. With the increasing thirst for an answer to this yet unsolved string of disappearances, only natural somebody would attempt to attribute it to something unnatural. In his 1955 book, The Case for the UFO, Morris K. Jessup used some of the previously mentioned stories to point the finger at extraterrestrial life forms. His point of view was amplified by Donald E. Keyhoe's The Flying Saucer Conspiracy, also published in 1955. And in 1959, Frank Edwards came out with Stranger Than Science. The term Bermuda Triangle was coined in 1964 by Vincent H. Gaddis in his article, The Deadly Bermuda Triangle, for the magazine Argosy. He defined the boundaries of this Bermuda Triangle more precisely than Sand, giving its vertices as Miami, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda. Well, Gaddis's article was somewhat overstated. He claimed that over 1,000 lives had been lost in the area. By contrast, Jones's article in 1950 reported only 135 victims. However, the basic premise that there had been a pattern of strange events and in the series of disasters not a single body had been found was not false. The article clearly illustrated a rather terrifying fact. No matter how advanced our technology or how thorough our search is, we can still disappear completely without a trace. The obsession with the triangle really took off during the early 1970s. Soon enough, every popular paranormal or true mystery book included a chapter, at least one chapter, but sometimes more, on the deadly Bermuda Triangle. Although you could find it with different names, such as the Devil's Triangle or the Hoodoo Sea. Among the several paperback books about the topic, there's The Invisible Residence by Ivan T. Sanderson, published in 1970. This book treats the Bermuda Triangle as evidence of an intelligent, technologically advanced underwater civilization. Then John Wallace Spencer published Limbo of the Lost in 1969. It became very popular by 1973. Maybe the most relevant of the bunch is the Bermuda Triangle, a bestseller written by Charles Berlitz and J. Manson Valentine, published in 1974. Book sent the triangle fever through the roof. It was in 74. I was invited to go with Charles Berlitz to the Bermuda Triangle. He took a bunch of people. But unfortunately, that same year, I had to make an appearance at Fort Bragg. Well, for critical and attentive readers, it became clear that these writers are simply cannibalizing each other's works. Little or no evidence of original research, and the so-called chroniclers of the triangle are soon thoroughly discredited, except for Berlitz. His book is still looked at by many people as an outstanding work of research. Even today, nearly 50 years later, the Bermuda Triangle occasionally resurfaces in the tabloids. While the former myth has been relegated to a footnote in history, its impact on popular culture is still indisputable. Triangle is still the subject of an ongoing war of scientific versus pseudo-scientific debate, although among a much smaller population. But beyond that, the various elements in the myth have inspired innumerable movies and television series and books and video games. Timeless classics such as the original Scooby-Doo cartoon and the sci-fi series X-Files have featured Bermuda Triangle. Capstone's 2010 video game Dark Void features a protagonist who's teleported to another world while flying through the Bermuda Triangle. Arthur Rankin Jr. wrote and shot his own Bermuda Triangle-themed TV movie in 1978. Japanese-American co-production is actually recorded on the island of Bermuda. Follows the story of an orphan college dropout who returns to the island hoping to find the cause of his father's death years before. So the Bermuda Triangle craze has left its mark. Whether, like most people, you simply accept the skeptic's point of view or whether you take a side in the scientific versus paranormal debate, you certainly heard of the triangle before now. It's part of the zeitgeist of the area. It's a good example of what happens when superstition meets technology. Maybe one of the last we'll see in this age of scientific advances and ubiquitous data collection. But then again, you don't know. The Bermuda Triangle's area is really not properly defined. The dodgy handling of the myth has led to a curious situation. The Triangle's area has not really properly ever been defined. The researchers, reporters, and self-appointed experts often disagree with Vincent Gaddis's original definition of the vertices of the Bermuda Triangles, Miami, San Juan, and Bermuda. Later writers and journalists have proposed other boundaries, and the total area fluctuates between 500,000 and 1.5 million square miles. This constitutes a major obstacle for the Bermuda Triangle paranormal proponents, as the skeptics can easily point out that many of the so-called Bermuda Triangle disappearances didn't happen within the confines of the triangle as they define it. And clearly, the Bermuda Triangle doesn't like compasses. If only one or two places on Earth where a compass points not toward magnetic north but towards true north, it may require some explanation for readers not familiar with the maritime navigation. In fact, there are several different norths. We'll need to understand two of them here. True north is where the meridians converge in the north. In other words, the North Pole. And as you can guess, true south is the polar opposite of true north, the South Pole. Magnetic north, located on Ellesmere Island in northern Canada, and this is where the northern lines of magnetic attraction enter the Earth. The compass needle simply aligns itself with the magnetic field of the planet. Therefore, it usually points toward magnetic north. Now, sailors have known the difference between true and magnetic north since the advent of the compass. They always factor this detail into their navigation. And the variation between the two is called magnetic variation or magnetic declination. U.S. Coast Guard was only stating the obvious when it declared that this compass variation or area is not compensated for, and a navigator can find himself far off course and in some deep trouble. However, the fact that the Bermuda Triangle has an uncommon magnetic declination doesn't explain the disappearances. Magnetic variation has been thoroughly charted, and a seasoned navigator, even a rank beginner, considers the compass variation in the area as a matter of course. None of them would reach their destination anywhere in the world if they didn't. While almost everybody knows about the triangle, interestingly enough, there's nothing official about it. It's not identified on maps. It's just a spot in the water we come to regard as the Bermuda Triangle. Something happens within the Bermuda Triangle is simply something that happened within the perimeter defined by three imaginary vortices. And seriously, don't let a pro-paranormal writer tell you the triangle's weather's calm. That area, besides being a favorite haunt of hurricanes, is often subject to sudden violent storms and other unexpected weather. Although these disturbances usually dissipate quickly, their intensity can lead to serious navigational problems. Well, what would happen, do you think, if you fell into an oceanic trench and just kept sinking? Underwater topography of the Bermuda Triangle is inconsistent, to say the least. Goes from gently sloping continental shelves to extremely deep oceanic trenches. In fact, some of the planet's deepest trenches are found in this area. Puerto Rico Trench has an average depth of just under 5 miles, reaching 5.3 miles at its maximum. If a plane or a ship sinks into this trench or any of the Bermuda Triangle's trenches, recovery of the wreckage will be effectively impossible. Maximum safe depth at which we can breathe air is about 200 feet. Using special technology, we can get anywhere between 1,600 and 2,600 feet below the surface, but after 1,600, it's a gamble. That's just still half a mile at most. And the Bermuda Triangle's currents are turbulent. Sinking into a bottomless watery grave isn't the only way for a ship to vanish in the Bermuda Triangle. Also, swift, violent currents. The triangle is located on the Gulf Stream, which moves very fast, over 5 knots in some areas. You know, the U.S. has a laboratory in the Bermuda Triangle. To be more precise, the U.S. lab is located on Andros Island in the Bahamas. This high-tech facility has an entire slew of missions related to simulated undersea warfare. Its goal is establishing, polishing, and maintaining the ability of the U.S. Navy. And to this end, it performs activities such as testing and simulation, evaluation, and research. Nature of this laboratory, in combination with the location and an eerie silence of what specifically it does, has led to a number of unanswered questions. Short story, though, seems to be that the Navy is using the area of the ocean to test drive submarines and various underwater weapons. And the Bermuda Triangle, as you might expect, experiences a lot of traffic. Historically, there's been a lot of traffic from the Caribbean to Europe. In olden times, ships carried sugar and tobacco and rum. In our time, they carried containers full of everything you can think of. In fact, the Bermuda Triangle might be one of the most heavily traveled shipping lanes in the world. And the cost of other routes makes avoiding the triangle infeasible. Most sailors aren't afraid of it anyway, maybe because they've been through it so often. I mean, are you afraid of your daily drive to work? I mean, you don't want to go, frankly, but you're not afraid to drive that road. Statistically, higher traffic may be the reason behind a seemingly large number of disappearances in the triangle. The number is large in the absolute sense, but it's only to be expected. An area with less shipping will report fewer disappearances. Well, there's a number of scientific theories for the Bermuda Triangle. Hexagonal clouds. The number of fatalities that have occurred within the triangle is a hot topic. Some sources say over 1,000 lives have been lost since 1945. Others say it's about 1,000. Others say it doesn't even get to 800. But any way you slice it, quite a few people have died there, and ships and planes undoubtedly do get lost. Among the most mundane causes for this, we find culprits such as the intensity of the Gulf Stream, the Atlantic weather, and the dangerous topography. But meteorologists recently trotted out a new theory to explain the so-called mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. They've discovered a strange pattern in the area's clouds. They're hexagonal. Besides their curious shape, these hexagonal clouds can generate violent 170-mile-an-hour air bombs. Such furious gales might be responsible for at least some of the mischief that happens in the area. The claim has its basis in imagery from a NASA satellite. Scientists concluded the hexagonal clouds may grow as large as 20 to 35 to 55 miles across, and the waves inside the air bombs can reach as high as 45 feet. And the Science Channel's What on Earth, Randy Cervini, a professor of geographical science at Arizona State University, stated the imagery is really bizarre because the clouds have straight edges. Well, in some ways, the theory of sea attrition is similar to the skeptic's theory that there's no mystery in the Bermuda Triangle. But it's not quite the same because it does acknowledge that something special about that area. First, a combination of three hazards. First, the undersea topography of the Bermuda Triangle is very wild. Formations are unusual and often crop up without warning. One moment you're sailing over a gentle slope, and the next there's a sudden miles-deep drop. Naturally, if a plane or a ship were to sink into such a pit, nothing would be recovered. As we're talking about depths not yet accessible to mankind. And second, the weather in the Bermuda Triangle area is very erratic. Calm waves with a pleasant breeze can quickly give way to a high-intensity storm that very large waves known as freak waves. Unprepared navigator, along with his ship, might be taken by storm, very literally. These weather shifts are so fast that satellites can't properly capture them, but they're strong enough to destroy smaller ships or planes. And add in hurricanes and waterspouts, basically a sea tornado that propels water thousands of feet into the air. You got yourself some seriously dangerous weather. Then there's the Sargasso Sea, a strange area even for the Bermuda Triangle. It doesn't have any shores. Instead, it's bounded by ocean currents on all sides. During the age of sail, this sea trapped many a ship with its weak winds and thick sargassum seaweed. The calm, stable weather conditions of the Sargasso Sea might sound enticing, but it's not necessarily the case. Sailing ships without a good breeze can be rendered almost motionless in the middle of that sea. As if that wasn't enough of an impediment to forward progress, a ship advancing very slowly is prone to get stuck in the thick seaweed that characterizes the Sargasso Sea. And there's a rather sordid story about this. It involves Spanish sailors during the colonization of the New World. When their becalmed ship became stranded for weeks, they had to make difficult decisions to ensure their survival. One of these was throwing their horses overboard to save drinking water. For this reason, the Sargasso Sea became known as the Horse Latitudes. These three facts together present a sinister situation for sailors. With the vast number of similar-looking islands in the area, it'd be easy for a captain to take a wrong turn. That happened, and intense weather conditions made the journey even more hazardous. What would happen to the ship? After sailing in the wrong direction, the ship might be left without enough fuel to reach land. If the ship became stuck in a Sargasso Sea, the only possible destination would be tragedy. Thanks to modern technology, that's all less likely today, but the bottom line remains attrition is no joke. Well, then of course we have a number of paranormal theories involving the Bermuda Triangle. One of those is the lost city of Atlantis. This theory is based on the mythical lost city of Atlantis. Once you stop laughing at the idea, let's take a moment to check it out. Supposedly, the mythical city possessed advanced technology, and some of them are left behind. The Atlantis theory of the Bermuda Triangle centers on underwater rock formations known as the Bimini Road. Edgar Cayce, an American Christian mystic born in 1877, allegedly prophesied that the city of Atlantis would be discovered in the future. And in 1968, 23 years after his death, researchers found stones and other strange formations near the coast of Bimini Island in the Bahamas. Now, they concluded these were naturally occurring, but Cayce's theory convinced a lot of folks. Those who believe argue that the stones are so well arranged they have to represent the roads and walls of Atlantis. Now, there's no proof of this theory, but neither can it be dismissed out of hand, not in the absence of a conclusive scientific explanation for the strange formations. And sonar images captured in early 2001 near Cuba show symmetrical geometric stone structures resembling an underwater urban complex. Now, without more evidence, that stands as an astonishing find that can't be woven into any kind of theory yet, but it certainly fueled the proponents of the Atlantis theory. But getting back to the point, how is the lost city of Atlantis related to the seemingly supernatural disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle? The legend speaks of some special, vastly powerful energy crystals that were critical to the city. The amount of energy that radiated could be used as a death ray. Proponents of the theory argue that a lot of the disappearances are a result of powerful energy discharges that either destroyed navigational instruments or simply destroyed the airplanes and ships themselves. The sea's full of mystery. Several underwater expeditions carried out in the waters around the Bahamas have revealed strange formations, such as a completely flat, granite-like ocean floor and structures that look man-made. Despite these curious findings, no energy crystals or anything like them have been found so far. And then, of course, our last one for today, aliens. It's hard to say what's more improbable. Aliens abducting ships and planes from the Bermuda Triangle, or energy crystals from the mythical city of Atlantis smiting them down. First, we have to understand the time period in which 5 military planes of Flight 19 lost contact on December 5th, 1945. Superstition and speculation were slowly being replaced by scientifically backed theories and facts, and this particular event couldn't be resolved in that manner. So the conspiracy theories stepped into the gap to come up with whatever theory they wanted to. And on that note, we come to the end of today's show. If we're not out of time, we'll be back tomorrow and talk more about aliens in the Bermuda Triangle. Until then, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show saying have a truly great evening.